Shalom fam, I just wanted to quickly announce that I've joined forces with an awesome merch company called Sanctified Supply Co. They're a whole Bible-believing company with a mission of spreading their conversation-starting products all across the plane of God's green earth. As you can see, I'm wearing a "We Must Hang on His Words" tee. All of their apparel is personally screen printed in their mom and pop shop in the good old US of A. So if you'd like to support my ministry and their company, head on over to sanctifiedsupplyco.com and toss one of these t-shirts into your cart. Type in Ken10 at checkout and save 10% on your entire order. Check the link in this video's description for quick access. Hello, and welcome to Hanging on His Words. My name's Ken Heidebrecht, and I appreciate you, fellow believers in the Most High God of all creation, for joining me tonight. I really do appreciate that you would take some precious time out of your lives to come and join me and my esteemed guest tonight. Before I bring him on, I would like to just say hi, guys, in the chat, and girls. And I want to make sure that everything's working all right, guys. If you can, in the chat, just tell me that the YouTube stream is working properly, because I was told through StreamYard before I hit the live button that there was issues with YouTube tonight. So I want to make sure that you guys are actually watching and hearing me properly. If you wouldn't mind just saying yes, you can hear, or indicate to me that everything's working all right, that would be great. Okay, looks good, sounds good. What's up, Ken? Sounds good. Okay, perfect, awesome, thank you. And also, I tried to stream in conjunction with Lighthouse, and I don't know if that's working, because I got a weird little error message as I was hitting that live button. So I don't know if it's working or not. I don't think it is, but hopefully we'll have that figured out for the next live stream. Either way, guys, thank you so much for joining. Just want to say hi to a few folks in the chat before we get started. We have Trevor Mischler in the house. Shalom, brother. Shalom. I've been very into his book recently about the House of El Shaddai. I'm currently working through it. Awesome. Yes. And he's got a few things on the go. One of those is his book, House of El Shaddai. So that's awesome that you're reading that. Thank you for joining us tonight, Trevor. Shalom Shire farm, is in the house. Thank you for joining us. Blessed one. Howdy all. Thank you for joining us. We got the pair here, GR Cleve. Shalom and howdy y'all. Thank you guys for joining. Juan Gonzalez is here. Shalom. Nicholas says shalom to everybody. Miss Marcia, how are you, sister? Shalom. Thanks for joining us tonight. Antonio Avalos is in the house. Hola familia. Friends, shalom. Shalom, brother. Sharon M's in the house. She's saying hi to everybody as well. We got the usual folks here. Thank you so much, guys, for showing up. I really do appreciate it. Tyler Porter says, what up, future immortals? Hello, brother. Thank you for joining tonight. I appreciate you. Future immortals, indeed. Shamgar's here. How's it going, Nick? Thanks for joining us, brother. Eternal Lights here as well, saying shalom, future immortals. We got Miss Sana Eads. Shalom. Country Kids in the house. We have Sharon M here. Mr. Jeremy McGarry saying shalom. Guys, Jeremy's joining me this Wednesday, actually. We're going to be live streaming around the same time. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. So please join us for that as well. Thanks, Jeremy, for joining us. Who else we got in the house here? Bethany at Barn Stars here. She's here for this. Thank you. Thank you so much. Say hello to a few more folks and we'll get our guest on here. Ernest T. Bay says hello. He's saying yes, he can hear me. Excellent. Jump Street is saying, I'm watching from Northwest Indiana. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it. Tim Kerwin's here. Got an eclectic group here tonight. People from all over Yahweh's plain earth. It's amazing. Jomato 311, it's a cave. And then we got Bob Cleveland here. Shalom, brother. All right, guys. So I have brother Andrew Hoy joining me this evening. He is an awesome brother. He has a heart for Yahweh and God's word. And I'll let him introduce himself. But I reached out to him a couple months ago because I was intrigued, actually a couple of years ago, with some of his research regarding the Tabernacle. And I'm sure many of you have already likely seen some of his work regarding what that is. And so I wanted to get him on just because I think it's pretty impressive. I think the work that has gone into everything that he's done is worth promoting and getting more eyes and ears on. So without further ado, I just want to bring my brother on here, Mr. Andrew Hoy.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for all the kind words. Thanks for your guest audience for their interest here and being called esteemed. I don't know about that. That's I'll just stay quiet on that, I guess. So
well, brother, I mean, it's you're worth definitely all the praise that you can receive, because people like you definitely help out our fellow brother sisters walks, right? I mean, I would never have come to this conclusion had it not been you and the gifts that the Father has blessed you with. And so any little piece of truth to me is just well worth talking about and bringing up to other people so that they can hear about it too and hopefully spread the word. So I really do appreciate you joining me tonight, brother.
thank you. Thank you.
So Andrew, like I was telling our guests here, reached out a couple weeks ago to you because I want to get you on. And you've been working on this project for how long? Why don't you just tell me? Like, give us your background. Like, what is your technical background, your education levels, your interest, and why you even came to come up to do this project? Just give us all the details if you would.
So I am a mechanical engineer. I went to Milwaukee School of Engineering, where my dad was a professor, and so it kind of made a no-brainer as far as where I went to school. But after that, I kind of started going into different energy-related fields mostly, and also took some extra courses for engineering design stuff. So, but with being mechanical, we're kind of jack of all trades and sometimes a master of jack. You figure that one out.
Yeah.
But this is where I picked up an interest in Hebrew back in like 2008. I had just moved. I was trying to do some church hunting. I was kind of shopping and going to different places. I'm like, I can't fit in. I don't fit in. All that. And so eventually I ended up upon a home fellowship and learning from this guy named Aaron. They were doing all their liturgy in Hebrew. I'm like, well, this is weird. But I'm like, it's no more weird than any other thing I've seen at church. So I'm going to give it a pass.
Yeah.
And Aaron was really intriguing. I'm sure he still is. And Aaron just kind of looks at me and he says, we should learn Hebrew. I'm like, yeah, sure. It sounds fun. And so that kind of started me on Hebrew self-study. And he moved away like a week or two. We did meet up for, I don't know, 2 or 3 meetings total. I think it was just 2, but I had bought the workbook, so I was kind of committed. And so from there, I started learning Hebrew and lost my job in 2011 and went to Israel and learned started learning Hebrew there at the Old Ponds and in university. So I wanted to get as much as I could, as fast as I could, and going to Israel seemed to be the thing to do on that. So so with that, I'm kind of in a state of disorientation. I've got no MDiv or any other religious credential in that regard. But
So should we plug our ears then? Because I mean, we know how important
right.
that is. You got to have the MDiv,
Right.
otherwise your word is nothing, right?
Right. So but people's appetites for credentials are off the charts. But the irony is, like, pastors would respectfully admit that no one's going to call them to work their plumbing or to pave their driveway.
Mhm.
That you're not going to have roughing out the frame of your house. No pastors doing that, no rabbis doing that, no priests, unless they're looking for I mean, they say Jesus was a carpenter, right? Is the so with that whole connection, there's a certain that this is a professional. It's a territory thing, right? So they've got their territory, and it's like our territory is the Bible, and we're expected to know it all about the Bible, and so we're really not going to come out and solicit any technical people for what they think this thing might be. And so you get these religious, these Mickey Mouse presentations, and like this, this, I call it the shoebox model, as I'm sure some of your guests have already heard me talk about this boxy thing. That's
Yeah.
what they say. Well, they came out of Egypt and built that, and so I started looking at those instructions and looking at, understanding that there's a lot of bad translations within all of your English Bibles. I don't care if you're a NASB, King James only, if you got your Sacred Name Bibles, whichever. There are a lot of translation problems and things you do not see that you see in original texts. And so
Sure.
going back into the Hebrew, cause and so forth. So I started investigating this kind of unintentionally, and I was really, doing other word study, and it kicked me into the world of Exodus. And so when I was there in Exodus around the Tabernacle, I started looking at that, the sheets. I was trying to figure out what was going on with these sheets, how they're all laid out. And, this is just me and my, it's a thread that I kept following. So once I discovered, basically I discovered the pi constant, the multiple of the pi constant in there. And I'm like, oh my, I'm like, I bet you this sucker is round, And so
Yeah.
I just kept pulling on the thread, and it's a gift that kept on giving. It builds itself if you know what, once you're willing to surrender a few, translational mishaps, boom, it all comes together. So, and the problem is we have a few predominant translation glitches that people commit to, and then they have paradigms and expectations. And the very first time I presented this at a Sukkot in 2015, there's someone who's just raised their hand. They asked me point blank, it's like, well, how is it that, all the rabbis and pastors have missed this? And who are you? It's kind of the point. Like, yeah, point well taken. Who am I? Because this is such a bizarre claim to make this. It's like, it's not square, it's round, and it's like, people think I'm out of my mind, and they can think that, but once we go toe to toe, and nobody wants to go to toe to toe on this for the most part in debates, because I don't know, I've really never encountered one, because I've never met anyone who's I guess grounded enough in the subject matter to want to challenge me. There's so the absence of experts in this subject matter would just blow your mind. I searched Israel high and low. I went to Israel like 2016. I went to every bookstore I could to find all the books that I could on the Tabernacle. And I only got, 2 or 3, and out of bookstores that are like, 10,000 books, 40,000 books, whatever, they could muster up is a couple. And this is, in the original language. And so you have the question of how is it that these people who are studying the Torah and the tabernacle portions are actually come up twice in a year. So it's 1/25 of the liturgical cycle. And the bookstores are almost completely bare of any content with it. And it's that bad, it's that obscure, and people are that indifferent to it, because as far as they're concerned, that's not the Israel they want to remember. They want to remember the Israel where they were great, where King Solomon was, and this, the David and his temple, and they got hundreds of billions of dollars going into this temple project. That's the Jerusalem that the Jews want to remember.
Right.
We don't want to think about this time in the wilderness where we're wandering around, like, eating manna from heaven, like where every day is a miracle. For whatever reason, we want to dismiss that and say, well, it didn't matter so much now. And this dispensational thinking just keeps on, cranking us along. It's like, and everyone thinks it's the tabernacle in the wilderness. Well, guess what? It was the tabernacle in Israel, because it stood in Shiloh for like 369 years. The structure outlasted the temples. It was 480 years between Solomon's temple commissioning and the tabernacle's decommissioning after Egypt. It's the First
Much
Kings
longer,
6 or 7. So, this perspective, I got to shake people into this perspective and say, hey, guess what? This matters. So,
yeah, I guess people just assume that there would have been professional engineers or, other folks who would have come to the conclusion of what we know to be this box like tabernacle model. And you just assume, like myself, all these years, that, hey, I mean, the pros must have know what they're doing, because when I read these texts, my eyes go cross. You know what I mean? Like I'll be the first to admit when I come across these passages when I read the scriptures, I speed read through it because it makes no sense to me. I have to
Yeah,
literally see it being built in front of my eyes for me to be like, oh, okay, I understand. Which is why I really do appreciate your 175th model, which you so kindly sent to me. Um, I'm not sure if my audience knows this, if you've announced it much, but Andrew has a model that's available on his website, folks, where you can literally put the thing together. And I'll show. I might as well just show it now, Andrew, if you don't mind. I'll just take a
sure,
couple
sure
pictures.
thing. I've got a little flyer thing too. I can pop this up on mine. So we'll put them side by side maybe. But
Sure, yeah.
that's this is my I guess first one of the first families I had putting it together, and these are all the parts from the kit. So I don't know what you have
Yep. So I was
on
just
your
gonna
end there.
show this. So this is
Oh yeah,
kind of like these are two pictures of partly through the build, and I have a video of kind of the end result there where I do like a 360 of the whole thing, and then I kind of go into the model itself. But guys, this thing is so cool. Um, my wife, God bless her, she allowed me to build this thing on our kitchen table, and it takes a little while, guys. Everyone's got different levels of experience and patience for stuff like this. So if you do end up purchasing something like this, make sure that you have the room, the space for it, because I thought I would get it done quicker than I did, and so it kind of took over my dinner table for a little longer than my wife wanted it to be there, but it's okay. She's awesome, and so we completed it, and it was super fun to do. There were some challenging moments for sure. I'm not the most patient when it comes to constructing things. I guess I always enjoyed Lego over Playmobil. I don't know if you guys had that in the States, Playmobil, but Lego was more my forte, I guess. So this was very reminiscent of those earlier years of my adolescence when I would build things with my hands, and I enjoyed doing it. And so it's been so many years since I've got to geek out and put something together. So it really was a treat to do. And yeah. Let me just play the video here, Andrew, real
you weren't
quick.
putting any parts in your mouth where you can.
Well, I was tempted at a few points because I don't. What's the wood that you use in this? It has a very smoky, like hickory, almost smelling flavor to it. It's amazing.
There's a lot of that's birch probably you're smelling.
Is
It's
that what that is?
I think
Yeah,
so.
it smelled really good. It wanted to prompt me to do some barbecuing. Um, Let me just put this up here real quick. So we got the video here. So this is the end result here, guys. How beautiful is that? Like that's stunning to me. The materials are incredible, like they're durable.
It's made for multiple take it apart, put it back together again as well.
Yeah.
Um,
So I tried to get in
so
here with the camera just to kind of show you what it would look like inside of this tent. I got my camera stuck in here, so I tried to like swiftly, without shaking it too much, get it out. So where are we at here, Andy?
well, we are just outside of what I refer to as the entrance screen. The entrance screen is it's one of the harder things for me to interpret as far as understanding the mechanics of it, the placement of parts and everything like that. A lot of times you're not given dimensions on everything, and so understanding what the relationships are between the parts as well as the functions, it's something you have to do from exegesis, so
Right.
but
This is the back part of it, the western portion. Yeah, this was so cool to put together, brother. I had fun with it. I think people will love it.
So the manual for this is it's about 40 pages. Like you got pictures on one side, you got text on another. But it goes through all the Bible verses. So if people are wondering as far as showing receipts, like this is a case where we try to have part for part and feature for feature to the extent that we can. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Um, the all these parts are very they don't make sense in part in English, but they definitely don't make sense under the old paradigm. So I'm sure Ken, I guess, hopefully can testify to the fact that I ain't just making this up, and this doesn't happen from just a few random parts.
Yeah, 100%. Well, one of the things that I really did appreciate about this build was that in the manual, you start off with the scriptural reference to the parts that we're going to be working on. And so, like I said earlier, I historically will like just skim through these parts of scripture because it doesn't make sense in my mind. You know what I mean? Like I can allow my mind to think about how's this working, but I needed to see it. And so not only did I see it, I got to build it. And so as I was reading the scripture reference for the parts that I was building as part of the model, it started to make sense to me. And so I really did appreciate that that was kind of like, part and parcel with this project, which is awesome. Um, yeah. Yeah, it was great.
I'm trying to trick the adults into buying this for their kids, where where they would otherwise not commit themselves to learning, like you said yourself. Had not been for this opportunity, you haven't built Legos in a long time. So this hopefully kicks people out of their comfort zone in their as far as their understanding. So this, I want to say this July, it'll be 10 years ago since I first discovered this. And my book, I think I released that, 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. But the point is with a book, it's very different from like going through and looking at pictures. And I think I have my dad quoted in that. So again, dad is an engineering professor. He used to love working with a lot of the farm kids and stuff, because they had taken tractors apart and all sorts of hydraulic parts, you name it, they would have to repair it on the farm. So the thing, a phrase he used to repeat is tell them, and they remember, show them, and they I'm sorry, tell me and I forget, show me I remember, but involve me and I understand.
Right. That's a
Right.
good one.
So you could have read a book twice the thickness, but without the hands-on part, your understanding would be, if I ask you how many parts did it have for the courtyard, or whatever, you're gonna have that better understanding sinking in, because you're actually counting the parts as you're laying them out, or what have you, right?
Right. Right. Brother, I got a question, and guys, we'll take some questions nearing the end of the live stream here, if you don't mind. But brother Shamgar here is asking, what is the real life circumference, not the model? Do you know that?
Oh yeah. The circumference is 314. So we have this, this is the gate curtain, the 314 cubits. When I say 314 cubits, this all this is made from these the exterior, the courtyard. I'm assuming that's the question that he's meant, where he's not asking about diameter, because usually, to have, when we describe, certain measurements, we go with circumference instead of diameter. No one gives their waist size in diameter,
Yeah.
because people are kind of oblong in that regard, right? So
Yeah.
in this diameter thing, so the circumference is 314. It's made of these curtains, which are and let me bring up a diagram on this.
Sure.
um
Brother, while you're doing that, I got a few people here are asking about purchasing it. I just want to let me just pull up your actual website here. Share screen. All right, guys. So you just go to project314.org, right? And that's probably the best place to go
Yeah,
to purchase this.
if you click on the cart, yeah, I hope to get this on Etsy and Amazon and all that other kind of stuff. But right now we're just kind of at the infancy of our marketing side of things, and
Yeah.
at a minimum, I can at least control everything on my website right now.
Exactly. And Lighthouse, hopefully, eventually, Andrew, because there's going to be a lot of people who are interested in this realm of study, who are going
Yeah,
to be on
yep.
Lighthouse. So Lighthouse will do well for you too. You can create your own marketplace and put it all up there as well. But guys, I just clicked the cart here over at project314.org, and you just scroll down. You can see all the things that Andrew has for sale on his website here. A lot of really neat things here. You just go down
So
here. There we go. Yeah, so it's right here. You just
right
click
now, your screen isn't showing it. It's showing just my homepage.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Why is that? That's weird.
it's the tab that you maybe brought up with the morphing tabernacle there.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, I was doing the wrong one here. Is that working now?
I'm not seeing the screen. You know what?
Okay, it won't let me. That's weird. That's really weird. I clicked let me try this again here.
Okay, yeah, it's coming up in mine. Let me just I'll do a share on my
Sure,
end
go
here.
for it.
So I can. All right, so if you are clicking on that that little shopping cart, which is right here, yeah, right up top here, you'll get a page for products, and you roll down here, and it's this kit.
Yeah.
So
Yes. So brother, that's 1/75th the size of the actual structure that Moses was instructed to erect in the wilderness, correct?
yes.
Are you working on something else that's a little bigger?
Yeah, let me just go back to that other question here quick though, before it gets away from us. So
Sure, yeah.
right now I have getting into this 314. So they asked about the circumference of this structure. So this is available from my website basically, but this is an article. I'm grabbing this out of an article, but I've had this on my website for a long time. Normally they think all the curtains are joined on the long edges, on the long edge joint. And so I say the long edges are the wrong edges because it talks about joining them on the cut edges. And what you'd be doing is loom weaving. So here's a little picture of a guy doing loom weaving. You got that, kind of lengthwise, and at the ends of it, you'd end up putting a knife or scissors to cut and make frayed edges. And so this is why
Right.
we know that it's joined this way, so that it has to be circumferential or cylindrical or a polygon or something, because these curtains have loops on both sides of them, which means they're made to connect to an adjacent curtain, which means that we connect on both sides. So these are 30 in measurement. There's 10 of them. So 30 times 10 is 300. And then there's another curtain, which is another 30, but it's folded in half. And then after that, we have a 1 cubit overlap between each of these curtains combined. And so this is how we come upon the circumference of 314. So hence the name Project 314. And if you're a math junkie, you understand the relationship between pi, the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter, right, is pi. It's 3.14159, da 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 da. So here the Bible has had it, represented in the plain text for, thousands of years. And, other people think that the Hebrews thought that pi was 3 times based on a misrepresentation of the King's Bible text about the laver, and that's misrepresented as well. But because there's actually, that's pi to 2 decimal points as well. But this is 314, and it talks about the length, the diameter, the span across the courtyard is 100. The diameter of it is, the radius is 50, and everyone think that radius of 50. They think, Well, it says it's 50 by 100. That's a rectangle. You're a fool. All right, whatever. So we
So
have,
who are these everybody's? Because like, I want to know who's objecting to this stuff. Like, do you have a bunch of people coming at you in your
well,
DMs?
they usually bomb and run. I mean, that's the technique. We have a lot of Torah teachers who just, they refuse to look at it, or refuse to consider that something apart from what they've taught could be right.
All right. Why do you think that cognitus is there for this?
I think it's a painful thing to think back on what all that you put your time and your life and your passion into, and to think you were wrong. I mean, it's emotionally speaking, it is so painful to say, "Oh boy, I've been teaching some of the wrong things for 3 decades." And this is where Rob Skiba was a real outlier, and a blessing to everyone, because he
Mhm.
wore his heart on his sleeve. He was always just testing things. He was doing it in public, and he's like, you know what, I'll be embarrassed, and it's like, prove God right and me a liar.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go there.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people just want to cling to the old, and it's because this involves controversy. People don't like the controversy as well, especially if they don't have mastery of the subject. They'll say, well, maybe it was that way, but you know what? It really doesn't matter. It's like, well, how about thus saith the Lord, right? So
Yeah.
this that text is led in, the leading into it starts with thus saith the Lord. So you're telling me that something thus saith the Lord is now unimportant. It's
Mhm.
not a salvation issue, so therefore it's not important. You've heard
That
the
always gonna.
same,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Multiple times.
whatever. So those people, you can't rely on them to know anything, because for them their default mode is ignorance, preferred ignorance. It's like, we were given this in the text for a reason, not just a reason, a number of reasons. And so, I personally think there's more revealed by the Tabernacle than the Dead Sea Scrolls,
Mm.
because the Dead Sea Scrolls are affirming a lot of things that they already knew. What did they? You name me one thing they found in Qumran that's changed the outlook of things in the world. I can't think of any. I mean, and you could say, well, they're all sitting on all these sacred suppressed texts. Maybe they are, but right now, as far as what's been released and what we know, tell me a single thing that we get out of those heaps of scraps of fragments that people are putting, millions of dollars on and are fascinated by, and compared to this. And it's like, this is the Rosetta Stone of a lot of the Bible. I mean, there's 50 chapters are mentioning the tabernacle outright. Think about how many of it's alluding to it. We have the mountain of Yod He Vav He. Okay, well, it doesn't make sense when you have shoebox, but when you have the mountain of Yod He Vav He, because it's a mountain, it's a dome. Make sure you make everything according to the pattern shown. What? Bahar, but the Bet is a house. Har is mountain. Make everything according to the pattern shown to you. Mountain house. Okay, this is a very different translation paradigm, because otherwise it has to be in the mountain, and there's no record that Moses went into a cave to get this revelation. What sense
Mhm.
does that make? He climbs all the way up to the top of a mountain to go inside a cave. But that's what the text says. Literally, it's Bahar. It's in the mountain. So a lot of times they'll probably translate that as on, but the Hebrew Bet, from a preposition standpoint, I have yet to see where it means on and not in. But what do I know?
Yeah.
I don't have an MDiv. So
Right. Yeah. I'm always fascinated with like the Exodus 25 and the reiteration in Hebrews 8 where it talks about instructing Moses to make sure you pattern everything according to what was shown to you on the mountain, right? And I think a lot of people kind of overlook what that is really saying, right? Yahweh is essentially saying that this is a copy and shadow of what he has in the heavens. And Moses was instructed to pattern what that is on the
you
ground here.
you show me a single picture of heaven. Google the word heaven and look at it in an image search. You will not see a single thing that incorporates this ridiculous arrangement.
The shoebox.
Um, yeah, the shoebox. So,
Yeah.
now we start talking, other fields of study when we start looking at the dome. So there's so many reasons for it, and there's all the ones that are against it are really flimsy, to be honest, academically speaking. I mean, how many proofs have you seen working through the manual where it's like, well, yeah, it's got to be round because you got the curtains on both sides thing, you got mention of clockwise, you got the pi constant, like after a while, like how many hints do you need,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
just
No.
I wish more people would understand it. I also wish more people would care about it because the more that this spreads, it's this is kind of a wake up call for families of faith at large. I think because they've been doing things their way for how long, and they're saying we have it all, we have all the truth. And I think that's in part what some of these outfits are terrified is like, to realize that, or, for the lay people to realize like, hey, these people are not superhuman. They're not operating in the prophetic status, at least not all the way or, all the time. And so, and for, you have Corinthians text, talking about, the prophets, keeping the prophets in check. The book of Ezekiel is like, measure out the pattern of the temple and show to the people their sins. It's like, what does that mean? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, if I measure out the pattern and measure out the pattern, I can say, you know what, you're pretty offensive the way, and getting into the idea of what a sin is. Sin is, chata, or this notion of offense. We use that in such a religious context. It's like, oops, I have sinned. We only say that in certain religious and moral things. It's
Mhm.
like if I, if I spill a cup of coffee on you, it's like, oop, I've sinned against you. We don't, nobody thinks of that. But it wasn't intentional, so it's not a sin. It's like, all these language paradigms that we have, there's so many junky ones.
Mm.
We need to shed them. I mean, what it's like when you start studying in this stuff like that,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, brother, I'd like to get into some of the nuances of this model here. Before we get to that, um, Rob Skiba, yeah, he was on a quest for truth. He definitely was, and that's actually where I first saw you talking to him when he had you on. That was the first time that I had seen this, and I was like, wow, this makes a lot of sense because back then I was heavy into trying to understand the scriptures pertaining to biblical cosmology, and so when you came on presenting this, I'm like, wow, this really, you know, lends credence to my then questioning belief about whether or not we live on a heliocentric model spinning globe, idea. And so yeah, that I was really grateful for Rob having you on at that juncture. But yeah, man, do you want to talk about some of the relevance of the actual tabernacle itself, some of the more nuanced features of it, or what you think is super important for people to know about it?
Well, some of that becomes very individualized as far as the why. Okay, when I say the why does this matter? And I try to bring it back to the "Thus saith the Lord" thing, right? Because it's like, if not for divine writ, in other words, if we didn't have scriptures that are inspired, what do we have? We just have a bunch of poetic opinions. We have, you know, arbitrary rules, without that which is absolute. So the fact that this, if you look at how much of this is given before a lot of the other Torah, to put that into weight. So, with the Torah being kind of understood to be the first 5 books of Moses, but you could actually look at it very different. And this is a Hebrew word Torah. So everyone will say that Torah means teaching or instruction, and I say no. The word Torah comes from the Hebrew word Tor, and our English word tour arguably comes from the Hebrew word tour. So if we look at what tour meant, it's this whole guided path concept. So you don't go on tour by yourself. You go tour. It's a circuit. Some sort of
Mhm.
circuit where you come back. You get on a bus. You ride that bus around. You come back where you started from. but there's someone with some expertise there with you, and he's guiding you on that. And so that's really the essence of tour, and how we put that backwards into the Old Testament definition of the Torah, right? So the Torah being the set of instructions, it's like, yeah, we've got this prophetic word that Moses is given in bulk. When I say in bulk, but more than anyone else is, who has more revelation in the Bible than Moses? So you look at the first 5 books, and again, the Jews consider that to be the Torah, and it is, a pretty extensive tour where Israelites were in the wilderness. They're in the Word, right? The Debarim is Debert is the idea of words and speech and things. So they're in the thick of it. The wilderness, Bamidbar. This idea that, it is a, life's entanglements. It's comprised of many things. So I'm trying to get it back to this original question on the what's important and the why. So when they first were at Mount Sinai, they get the voice coming down from heaven and giving them the 10 words, right? The 10 commandments. How do
Mhm.
they respond? Don't have God speak to us again, or we'll die, right? And so this is not the right response for a people who wants to become a nation of priests. So getting into this whole thing, look at the amount of commandments that are given between, say, Exodus 20 and Exodus 23, 24. So we have the tabernacle starts in 25, right? So we have this section with the tabernacle given for 6 chapters, and the whole rest of the book they're dealing with the tabernacle, commissioning for the tabernacle. So it's like you'd think it would get a little bit more elevated attention. We have a lot of interest in the feast days, right? Which is great. The Moedim, in the plural, or the Moed in the singular, right? So this is called the Ohel Moed, the tent of appointed times. So, people who are studying, say, the calendar, do we have to know anything about, if we're going to have a feast, if we're going to have an appointed time, what do we need? We need to have a host. We need to have guests. We need to have a time, a date, agenda, etc. We also need a place. Okay. So this was the place,
Mhm.
so is everyone, and this is part of what I'm hoping to build bigger and bigger, etc. But, we have money going into the mega churches. I want to see that kind of budget to be thrown into
A mega
this.
tabernacle. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because you know what? This is the only thing in the entire Bible where the children of Israel are commanded to build it. Apart from that, the strongest case of a building project is Noah's Ark, right? And Noah's Ark was what? For a flood that was a one-timer. And this was given to Israelites for the commandments, who are supposed to be ministering forevermore. This whole
Mhm.
forever. This was a forever part of a forever covenant. So it's like, if we know this, wouldn't we have interest in restoring this? Wouldn't we have interest in thinking about Solomon? Solomon tore it down. Well, why did he tear it down? Probably to stop any hope of competition. But if you look at, like, the U.S., they used to have that church where America was dedicated to God. That was in like New York City, and that got smashed, right? It's not like someone who came along and said, okay, we're going to build a bigger church, let's tear this old one down, because that's part of your heritage, man. I mean, you think about this from a heritage standpoint, like how many people would just be saying, my grandfather's grandfather's grandfather built this piece of wood for this, or this piece of silver, or whatever. I mean, you're stripping a people of their national legacy.
Mhm.
And if you think about that from a Solomon standpoint, and what did they, and look at the response with King David. King David wants to build. He's like, oh, here I am living in this palace, and the poor ark of the Lord just sitting in a tent. And then Nathan's like, well, do what you want because the Lord's with you. And then Nathan has to come back and kind of eat those words and say, you know what, David, this is what the Lord says. When did I ever say to the people who shepherd my people Israel, build me a house of cedar. I've been quite happy with the tent. Very much, thank you. Tell you what, David, I will build a house for you. And so this whole intention of what's being built, and I joke with some of the Jews sometimes, saying that the temple itself was replacement theology. They opted to replace what they had. They had a theocracy and a good thing going under this system of tabernacle, and then it went over. The Levites failed to do what they were supposed to do, and the monarchy was kind of given control of it. And within one generation, you had the splitting of the nation. So that the whole nation split north to south. And so I see this as a very much as a reunification of Israel. There's a lot of tribal identity concepts and what do you call it? Typology that is embedded in this thing.
Well, can we talk about that
Sure.
typology? Where I mean, in your part of your write up in your manual, you bring up some interesting things in the conclusion aspect of this manual that you send in the kit. And one of the things is the typology, and you ask what other objects in nature or themes in scripture might the tabernacle resemble or reveal, or even, sorry, the Christology of it. How does this tabernacle, which was an anointed structure, relate to Messiah according to Hebrew or Jewish literature? Do you mind touching on some of that?
Sure. We have when I say Christology is one point. So let me think of first of all, we have to recognize what's over my shoulder here. You know what this thing is? It's Mashiach. So you know what Mashiach is? It's Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
It's anointed. This structure itself, it says right in the Exodus text that this is an anointed structure. So you want to talk about an invitation for understanding or the introduction to your Christology. You look at things like the garments as for example, garments of Messiah. You look at things like when I say the piercings, okay, with the piercings of the hands and feet, more specifically the hands. You see that in this model. But you don't know what the hands are, unless you're looking at the Hebrew. We have all sorts of anatomical languages, or all sorts of anatomical content, and this is something that I guess going back into my, I guess doing the whole little webinar plug. Let me just throw my
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so we got this my Levite boot camp, I'm calling it. So this is a set of webinar recordings that I have. Actually, let me think here. I think maybe I have. I'm in the middle of doing an update on my website stuff as well. I have too many things I'm trying to do all at the same time.
Yeah,
But
I understand that. Yep.
so I've got this. It's a 7-session set, and right now I don't have any live ones scheduled. But as far as my recordings, I'm getting into how anatomy, tabernacle anatomy is. To understand that, to perceive that, once you start to, let me just turn myself back on here. Well, I guess maybe you know what, I can do this. So once you start to perceive the amount of anatomical things in the tabernacle, in the text, first of all, you have to remember that Hebrew is a language. Half of the letters are allusions to body parts. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big theme right there. And so then you start looking at how are these letters spelled together with these body parts, and how are these body parts then shown in the tabernacle, and how are these body parts, how would I say, not just shown but shown in the language, shown in the verbs, the Hebrew word for shoulders, kataf. Okay. And so what do we have in the tabernacle that's resembling shoulders? And a kataf is kaf, tav fe pay, and so pay or fay. So this whole the spelling of that. Once you start to see this, especially in like the Paleo Hebrew. I mean, I've got an article I did on Paleo Hebrew in the Tabernacle, as well on the website. There's a page that's dedicated to articles here, but I got kind of a Paleo. Getting into all that. So again, how the Paleo is very anatomical and everything. So let's see on the webinar. So I get into the anatomical, and this is so much of it's built precept upon precept, and so you get into the priestly garments. We get
Mhm.
into the idea of consummation. You have actually very some wedding related themes that we see in the tabernacle as well. Some of these are just like plugged into Jewish tradition. I get into sacrifice, and I get into the altar at the front entrance. So again, they show this as a box. this is
Yeah.
this is this is really absurd because it tells you you're cutting up the animal before you're putting everything on. So this is
Andrew, is
just
the
another.
altar and the brazen, like the brazen altar and all that stuff, going to be included in future models, do you think?
Yeah, well, right now I do have a whole session, this whole webinar session where I'm getting into the makeup, and I believe to have found that the instead of the pi constant, the phi constant. So the phi constant is it's like the golden mean, golden ratio. It's the thing that we see in life, in waves, and in snail shells, and in human body proportions, and you see it in flowers and sunflowers, the Fibonacci sequence.
Right.
So that seems to be very much plugged into the copper altar, which again they translate it's four square. It's like, well, it's square. It must be, it's like, no, it's quartered. It's quartered. If I whip out a 25-cent piece out of my pocket, you're going to call that a square too. It's like it's quartered. It's getting into the compass. There's four quadrants of a compass. Does that hurt your feelings that it's round? Hopefully not. I need to be less sassy, I guess.
Well, now you got me thinking. I mean, this is kind of a side tangent, but the way the New Jerusalem is described dimensionally, how do you see that, like, visually looking? Is it your traditional box? I know some people
Absolutely
have.
not.
No?
No way. No way. No how.
No, okay. This might be a whole nother thing. I don't want to like force you to answer here if you have something in the works regarding this, but I always considered it, 1,500 miles squared, equally as high, a box,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I'm willing to be wrong.
Yeah. So we have the issue of radius, diameter, elevation. What's interesting, like the tabernacle, you have uh, so just getting into the specifics of the dome here. Let me see if I can kind of point my finger out at the curtain here. Okay, so here's the curtain. That curtain is made of strips that are 30 by 4. Okay, but it says that the courtyard is 5 cubits high. How can this be? And I can tell you how it can be. It's just because they poke the the courtyard curtain into the ground. And
Okay.
so where are we measuring from becomes the question. Where are we measuring from? And when we understand that our points of reference might not be as what we expect, then we go back to the drawing board and say, well, what is this measuring? We know the English word width, width, and most people, again, I think they think that translators couldn't possibly misinterpret such a simple word. But rachov, we have resh, chet, bet. So what do we have? Head, and then with resh, okay, that's the first letter, which is like our letter R. Actually makes the same sound. Chet, which is a little bit of cough in the mouth, but it resembles a wall. And then the tent is the letter bet. So it's basically saying head, wall, tent. So that's what the measurement is. Well, in this case here with the dome, guess where the head is? I'll just take a wild guess.
At the very top?
There you go. And that's, you could say, is one of the heads, because if we look at the head on the horizontal, you could make an argument for another head. So the question is, if we have an ear of corn, does it hear? If we have a ear of a table, does that hear? Is that a piece of corn? It's like, no, it's not. And if we have a eye for a hook or an eye for a fish line, are they expected to do the same thing? Well, now we have a human eye.
You
We
let
have
those
the letter I.
transhumanists at it. They might accomplish that, Andrew.
I I stand corrected. I stand corrected. So yeah, as we blur this together, but this is speaking of this problem of language and expectation. And when we're reading our English Bibles, we have very noun-centric expectations. We think first of nouns and objects. And once you start to look at the Hebrew, you see all the verbs, or all the nouns are based on verbs. They're all rooted in verbs. And I can't think of a case where they're not. And even in the cases where they're not, they still are, because every single Hebrew letter has a verbal association as well as a noun association. So like, what is a chet? A chet is a wall, and a chet is what does a wall do? It blocks things. It partitions things. It's a barrier. So again, we got this marriage between noun and verb to get meaning. And this is why the Hebrew language is so rich. I can't look at our letter J and say, look at this J, what this means right here. And this, I can't go into anything of depth. It's like, hey, this is Fred. Well, Fred, what's your name mean? Oh, this is, but what is Ezekiel or Noah? Noah is rest, right? Noach. We have Hezekiah, Chazak Yah, strength of Yah. So you start looking at all these things. It's like, it's a little bit like Native Americans, or I guess you say Native Canadians too. It's like, yeah, there's running bull and sitting bird. These names for them. We think of it as cartoonish, but at least it's not benign. And Hebrew was it's speaking to very particular attributes, very particular parts of history, right? So Shimon, Simeon, you have Shema is the idea of hearing. Certainly the Lord has heard me, and here is Shimon, Simeon. So we have all these names that are embedded in disclosure. Or their function is disclosure, containment of meaning, and revelation of meaning. And so this is the how and the why and the what of that. It's very powerful. And again, the more you go back to Hebrew on this, and so when people want to whip out their English Bible, the first time I presented this at a Sukkot thing, there's this guy came up, it's just a well-worn Bible. You could tell that he was an astute student, and he's got his thing all flopped open, just pigskin leather, just spread wide. And he's like, right here it says corners. And just like, I looked at him and I was kind of torqued at this point. I'm like, so the Hebrew for that was like mikaitzot. And so mikaitzot, it happened to be spelled with an ion. And so this word for cutting, mikaitzot is based on the word for cutting. We have katzats and cuts. So you see this, it's like a cut eye is what it's referring to. And so but they translate it as corners. Therefore, it's got to have corners,
Okay.
So there's all sorts of botched anatomy, like basically in the shoebox model, if they arrange it horizontal, assume it's probably going to be vertical. And if it's arranged vertical, it's probably going to be horizontal. If it's big in diameter, it's probably small. If it's small, everything is
opposite,
like,
Wow.
Yeah, it's like Superman and Bizarro, that Bizarro character who's got a backwards S and cruising around. I don't know, but
that's funny. Andrew, I'm really interested in your perspective regarding the timekeeping aspect of this. this tabernacle. You say in your manual there under the timekeeping section, how could the tabernacle be used as a sundial to help determine time within the day or year and better define the appointed times or holy days? Do you mind just elaborating a little bit on that? Because here at Hang On His Words, we love
Sure.
timekeeping. We like calendar related stuff. So I'm just really keen to hear what you have to say about how that's interrelated.
Yeah, I have an article here, and I'll just kind of walk through. So this again is on my website on the articles page. There's again this is called the tent of appointed times, Israel's clock, calendar, and compass. But here is parts of the page of this. Um, this is getting to let's see. Looking at where the sun appears in the sky, or at sunrise and sunset. And so, I've made some people kind of torqued about, just making reference to equinox. Okay, so I'm not trying to push a calendar down anyone's throat in particular, but if you want to pretend that this thing couldn't or wouldn't be used in conjunction with timekeeping, we're going to just have to agree to disagree. Um, the tabernacle was set up on the first of Aviv. Okay, so the first of Aviv is what? It is in the spring. It is the first month of the Hebrew year. It's sometimes referred to as like the month of Nisan. Okay, so this month of Aviv is it's the only month in the Hebrew that's given by name. And so why is this? And getting back into this whole idea that actions speak louder than objects, in this case, words. We have Aviv is in the spring, and people say, well, talk about the barley being in Aviv, as a calendar marking thing. But this is really the word Aviv and Saviv are very similar spellings in Hebrew. And so the same way we build things on English roots. There's a runner out there. Oh, what is he doing? He's running. Well, he's running to the run.
Hmm.
And we think of that. We say things like that. We thoroughly understand the you got running shoes. You have and so there's other more nuanced language building blocks, if you will. But a lot of that goes back to Latin, and a lot of the Latin is what comes from Greek and oftentimes Hebrew. And so with Aviv, again, related to Saviv, and Saviv, it's spelled with two letter bets, which are two tents, which are like open mouth type things. So when you just invert one, well, you got two halves of a tent that are put together. And Saviv is spelled with a samach, which is a circle in the newer in the Aramaic script. So it's like two houses in a circle, and there's also a hand in there, hand denoting action and so forth. But so this Abib, so I personally think that this is a blatant reference to the equinox. And
Hmm.
I believe from a historical standpoint that they used to be on a 360-day calendar. When I say used to be, I think that changed in the time of Hezekiah when the sun went backwards on the sundial. So I believe that to be literal. But and so as far as what happened to the calendar after that, well, all these cultures started adding more. They added 5 or 5.25 days to their calendar at that juncture. That was 700 BC. So we look at the Bible account. It talks about this strange thing that happened, and after that, that's when the makings for the Hillel 2 calendar or Hillel calendar came in. Were born really with the basically you're adding 7 leap months over the course of 19 years. But anyway, I believe that at this time it was in the spring and it was at the time of equinox. I think that the months were perfectly staggered. And I'm not trying to, again, push this for the sake of how to deal with the calendar in present day. But I am saying that if you are setting this up on Aviv 1, which is like the beginning of the year, kind of like happy birthday world, right? That the due east reckoning would have been considered the point of origin. And so even the Hebrew word for beginning, there's kedom or mitkadem, this idea of first. it's referring to Kadem. Kadem is actually spelled with a kuf, which is showing like a split circle on a horizon, like think in terms of sunrise, right? So we're seeing the sun come up over the eastern horizon, and so you can kind of see this point of where east is. So unless you're like directly overhead in the equator, if you're in the northern hemisphere, the sun will take this path. You can see my mouse, hopefully.
Yeah, I can see it. Yep.
Cruising around from east to west. So it rises in the east and sets in the west. Well, that's true any time of year. So, you would have basically the whole outer portion of this to track for, knowing where the center of this structure is, to be tracking, how far you are along in the year.
Right.
So that's one aspect of calendar on that. So this is showing the arcs or the arches of the sun path overhead. So that's kind of one of the things. Also, you've got the ocular concept, right? The sundial. I'm sorry, the way that the sunlight, the skylight in the yurt, or in a dome, in a what do you call these? I'm drawing a blank on the name for these these big capital
Yeah,
domes.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's a more official name, but the ocular, this is referred to as ocular. It's a lot like a pupil, so that you could be using internally for light tracking as well. So the bigger they are, the more accurate they get, right? So I'm
That's
just
really
trying
neat.
to think of the size, and because then you're having the sun is traveling, an inch or a couple inches a minute. I forget. I worked the numbers. So the bigger your structure is, the more shadow it can cast. And so if that's kind of a controlled dimension thing where you're adding marks and you're using ground space to be marking all that off. So so we have all the prophetic stuff in there as well, like 144,000. So we get into some of the other aspects of calendar. 144,000, like 144 degrees, between different steps, curtains and interior, the tabernacle. So 144 again is 12 by 12. And what do we have in the tabernacle showing patterns of 12s or counts of 12s? And so this is where it gets really kind of fascinating. Um, I was watching a YouTube documentary by a guy named Scott Onstadt years ago, and he was showing how there was a guy from Eastern India, and this guy, he went to Chartres Cathedral. So this is a cathedral, as I understand, France, Chartres Cathedral, and he's saying, look, there's all these. All the chakras, the counts of the chakras are on this structure, and it's like,
Right.
no, those aren't the counts of the chakras. Those are the counts that perch in the tabernacle. So when you see that, so it gets back into this anatomical. So between east and west, we've both departed from the truth in some of these religion things. So we have religion in a how would I say, in a all of our stuff is we get to be so naturalistically obsessed, where naturalism is that's our God, that's our science, natural laws, the predictability and so forth. But within the East you have a lot more mysticism and kind of room for the spiritual forces, acting upon things in this world. And we've poo-hooed everything in Eastern medicines because it's like, oh, that's all superstitious. And it's like, well, what if they were given a part of it and we are given a part of it, and coming back together? I mean, this is part of the Tower of Babel, right? Where it's like nothing will be too hard for these people if they all are working together. And so language is the thing that is the connecting point, and language, specifically
Hmm.
Hebrew, when you start to draw all these roots and meanings and things like that. I would really like to embark on this project. Getting into etymology with, when I say Edenics being the idea that all languages go back to Eden. And the Tower of Babel, everyone was scattered, but within that, they seem to preserve bits and pieces of original Hebrew. And so, what if we were to sum those back together? That's, kind of a side project. I would. There's a guy in Project 314 team where we've been kicking it around a little bit. It's like, how do we do this, or can we do this, and
Huh.
what would it mean for Bible translation? I mean, it would blow your mind as far as it, and it would even give native Hebrew speaking people more insight to their own language. I'm quite convinced of it, because I've been able to find some words in the Tabernacle description which seem to speak to English words and English concepts, like sorech. So it sounds a lot like stretch, right? And it's built on the verb for ruach, which is for wind. So it's like a circling wind, So it's something that is being pulled out, or even pinned down, because you have the psalmic is related to attack as well. So so all these bits and pieces, these these revelations are all contained within the Hebrew. But as someone who doesn't understand English, if they have their own expectation of what the Hebrew is for soreach in from the Strong's definitions, or which were basically, I think it sounds like most Jews don't find them objectionable, as far as that being an ancient source. And when the language was reborn, 120 years ago, whatever, it wasn't like they were disputing a lot of lots and lots of terms. And it goes back to the thing that Hebrew just has so much more depth than our English does.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of going on to a number of tangents, but the point is there's a lot of potential. We have the word capel or capellet in the tabernacle, talking about the folding over that front wool sheet. Well, what do we have? The animal pelts. What do? We slap this, like wool. This is how wool is kind of formed, is by beating it sometimes to make it all napped up, or whatever. And it's this idea of doubling, and that this Hebrew word kapalta or capellet, I forget which it was on the vowel points, but you can hear the word couple, and so they don't even translate it as the word couple into our English Bible. They translate it as double. So
Hmm.
double the curtain over. It's like, well, couple it over. It's like that couple it is. It's like that was the original text. It's like, why can't you just give it back to us?
So they're doubling it when it should be
Yeah.
coupled as in joined together.
Well, no, they're coupling it. It's a couple. It's a pair,
Yeah.
right? It's the point is it's a doubled thing. So yes, it's folded. We would say folded is kind of the most practical. But if I said, if I have a sheet and to take that sheet and couple it, it's like, well, how do you couple this one sheet? It's like, well, I have to double it over somehow. That's but the point is here we have a word, coupling and doubling. So there's a couple of people over there. They're coupled. They're joined. And so I'm not making the argument that it's pushing for the idea of joined, but rather that seeing the original Hebrew was speaking of the word couple. They've thrown it away, and they've given us back just double,
Right.
which is kind of like, why take us further from the language? There's
Hmm.
all sorts of cases where they do that. So
Right. I'm just gonna say thank you to Be Good Broadcast for your membership. I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, brother, I got a question for you, and then maybe we can take some questions from the audience. Are you okay with that?
sure.
Yeah. How long do you think now, considering you got the shoebox behind you, and then you got what you're asserting to be the real, actual biblical model behind you as well? The shoebox seems like it wouldn't take as long to dismantle and relocate as they moved around, as opposed to the other one. How long do you think this would have taken to, like, this? It sounds tedious to me to have to take down such a massive structure and then build it back up again, as they often traveled around with this thing. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I'll answer your question, but I'll ask for a clarification, or ultimately, I'm pushing for an endorsement. So you're saying that the dome here that I'm asserting, would you assert this too now at this point that you built
Yeah,
it?
I do. I'm more convinced with the dome model as opposed to the shoebox model.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now I'll be a good boy and answer your question. Um, so the uh, I actually have worked out the erection plan for this, and I did this like back in I want to say 2016 timeframe. It was very, very frustrating because I had this guy who's a model builder who would listen to Rob Skiva's broadcast, and he contacts me. He's like, "Yeah, I've made models of the temple and Ezekiel's temple and everything, and this sounds cool. I'd like to help you out." So he's a tool and die maker. So
Okay.
this is like liquid. When I say liquid gold, this is like gold to me because I'm like, it's like finally a guy with some serious tech skills. This is a talented person that can help me express this physically. So I was like, working with this guy for a while. It ended up being like about, in excess of 9 months, that I was talking to him, and he was working 55 hours, 60 hours a week at his regular job. And so, while he had an interest in doing this, the the only way that he had been able to do it is with tools from his workplace, and with him being overwhelmed at work with work schedule stuff, he didn't have any time. Right? But before he actually was equipped for that, he's asking me all these questions. He's like, "Well," he says, like, how do they put it up?" I'm like, "What do you mean, how do they put up? They just put it up. They put it up." And it was an element that I had not articulated. I hadn't calculated all of it. I knew it could be done, just wasn't quite sure how or how it was best. And so from that challenge, so he's laying down this challenge. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to shove this down your throat. Like, um, here's the plan. So I actually went through, I got, basically 80 drawing pictures with calculations on the spreadsheet to go along with these steps. When I say steps, and whether it's 80 or you could do this a number of different ways, as well as some of the joint design you could do it differently. But what I found to be work, I've actually built this with a kind of a 2x4 based scaled model, which is 1/8 scale, and that base is well, the if you have the whole indoor setup, and that's an indoor only model, and that's at the perimeter of it's 35 feet in diameter. Okay, so
Right.
that's the 1/8 scale. And we had that installed on some plywood, and we had it elevated and so forth. But where am I going back to this question of the erection plan? Um, so I can come up with a way. How do you lift? Um, let's see how many tons. 75 tons worth of wood in the wilderness, a flat plain with no crane.
Is
That's
that
the
is that you
question.
speculate how much? 75 tons?
Oh yeah,
Oh
yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah.
Compared to what?
It's
What's the alternative with the other model?
Well, theirs is actually more. Theirs
Oh, is that
weighs
right?
more.
Okay.
If you're basing it off the same size cubit, theirs is more. They are using wood beams that are anywhere between uh, let's see, 33% more in weight, or arguably twice as much in weight. And so when I say that a beam is 2,000 pounds, theirs would be 6,000 pounds. And this is based on a given cubit size. But if you look at, let me just see if I can bring this up. Temple Institute Tabernacle pictures. All right, so I'm going to go to the absurd of the absurd here. Our good friends at the Temple Institute here. So this is the shoebox of shoeboxes, and what you see are this is more when I say religious fiction. There we go. This is like I don't know, this is a sleigh. It's it looks kind of like a sled out of the you know,
Yeah.
German Christmas or something. I don't know. So this is the wood beam that they assume to be used for the walls, etc. And if you take a look at their this big picture of them doing kind of an erection plan, you can see how, look at this guy, he's up there, this is 20 feet, he's up there 20 feet probably. And this is similar to the scaling that that I was using for as far as the cubit size anyway.
Right.
So as we have all these guys on ropes, we have heave ho. Well, they got these big blocks down here. These big blocks are, these things would weigh like 2,000 pounds, 3,000 pounds, and they were not given that much silver to use. Period! Exclamation point. And these sometimes Jews can be very meticulous in their in their reasoning, but they're terrible when it comes to what they think that the tabernacle is about. So you're talking about how your eyes start to you start to doze off and everything when you start reading these texts. It's like, well, make this big, not that big, and this is why these dimensions at some point start to matter, right? So they think these are big pieces of wood that are just stood free-ended on the ground on a soft earth. This
Right.
isn't even on the benefit of flat and level concrete. How are these things going to just stand up by themselves? Well, they got all these toe line or these tie down lines and everything like that where you trip over them and all that. But see, this guy, he doesn't approve either. You can see it in his face.
Yeah, he's kind of got a not convinced look on his face there.
Yeah. But
Have you reached out
anyway,
to anybody at the Temple Institute?
well, it was a kind of in a number of years ago, and
Yeah.
and I shared a little bit, and there was no appointment time to be had to be allocated for me. So,
Oh, okay. I see.
so where am I? So we were talking about this procedure. So this procedure, realizing that there's a lot of either case, you have a lot of weight. Okay. In either case, their beams, they start making wider beams. And the reason they make wider beams is because they're assuming two-dimensional dimensions. And so Exodus 26:15, it talks about how these beams are to be 10 cubits by 1 by half. And so they translate it as they're 10 cubits by 1.5. So
Right.
this is why I'm saying that if you look at this dome, you say, well, that's a whole lot bigger. You bet it is. It's 17 times the floor space. But if you look at the box thing, they got all the weight because they're trying to make these bulletproof, tank-proof walls made of thick wood. And who builds like that, especially a tent? The point of a tent is what? It's to take as little frame as you can and spread as much fabric as you can. Keep it light, right? But to the point of your question, what would it take for a crew? And so I actually did the calculations. How many guys do we need on the ropes? How many guys do we need, heave ho? And they had 20,000 Levite men. Oh, well, no, that wasn't men. 20 or 22,000. I think it was 20,000 males, Levite males. So of that, you could say, at least 10,000 are going to be, full adult, mature working types, between the ones that are between the ages of 20 and 50 or 30 and 50. So pre-serb between 30 and 50 and the Levites did between 20 and 50 because this is some heavy stuff, so when they get older and it's like, my back's giving out, I'm not helping out with this anymore. So that's, those guys are not included in that labor force. So of a group of 10,000 men, okay, you would only need at any given time about 3,000 people to be putting this up. You could get it up and down. You could tear it up in a day. You could set it up in a day. You could tear it down in a day.
Okay.
I actually have the amount of force. People like how many pounds they have to pull on that rope or to push on this lever or whatever. I mean, it is viable. I've actually used the same lifting procedure by myself to set up the smaller my 1/8 scale model. And so the real, when I say my with my next ambition, I'm trying to I was kind of wanting to crowdfund this whole build, and I still want to on that. And I'm starting the build, and I've got a shop rented out, but I'm as far as being able to push everything in the media arts world and so forth. I mean, it's a lot. And when I built that 8th scale, I spent about 4 months on the frame. And right now you have to develop a lot of custom tooling. I've tried to get some of these parts quoted by people who do custom woodwork, and they're like, there's a lot of pass. I'll turn that down. I don't want to do anything that weird, and I mean, it's
Yeah.
not super weird, but who's building yurts like this? When I say yurts, it's very yurt like.
Yeah, for
And
sure. That's what you
it
think when you
has
see it. Yeah.
some very specific structural requirements, but they're not something that a skilled guy with a chisel couldn't do. If I had a team of 100 Amish guys, we could probably build this in a couple of weeks. Um,
Yeah.
and
The
but
Amish get things done. Yeah.
yeah, and I've actually wanted to to get when I say Amish engagement and interest on this, because there is no work crew that I would trust to erect a full size, apart from the Amish, where if you're using a large manpower, if you ever watch them lift a barn and it looks like they have little ant legs and stuff as they're as they're cruising a whole barn, lifting it at the same time. So this kind of work in ancient Levitical space would have been very similar to that with 3,000 men. Okay, so that's to answer your question of how many
Okay.
people and how, and you could be more clever in that you could probably get a crew of 10 guys to erect this. You would need a few things as far as anchor points, putting stakes in the ground, using winches. So I'm basically, saying, okay, we're going to do this without using any compound pulleys. That was part of my rule, because there's a lot of people who don't think that they had compound pulleys back then. And so I'm just going out of my way to make it the most difficult, but to still prove its feasibility. And
Right.
it totally is. So it's not just speculation on my end. If someone wants to, it's like, show me the receipts here. It's like, I'll I'll drill you into the ground with boredom with engineering calculations on these things. So
We'll take your word
um,
for it on that one. Blessed one is saying the hole in the top is great for letting incense escape and rise up. It does seem like it's better ventilation for sure.
yep. Naturally, yurts have excellent convective airflow. And so what you have at the base of this are curtains, and the curtains actually have, when I say some openings, so this Hebrew word is there's a barich or bricham in the plural. We have the idea of, this is where we get our English word bar from, and brich comes from barar. So when we have Brit, the Brit Hadashah, it's the new covenant. This idea of the covenant. It's the idea of cutting, and we have the word barar, or we have a bar of soap. Well, how is it that a bar of soap is like a bar for a gate or a prison or a jail? Why do we use the word bar for some? It's not because a bar of soap is shaped like long and cylindrical.
Hmm.
It's because both of them are capable of cutting. And the Hebrew word barar is actually made reference to in the text where they would use it in metal refining processes. So it's basically alkali. It's like what do you call it? It's like lye. Okay, so if we look at lye or potash, so it's potassium that they're throwing in there to help clear the slag of getting the impurities out of the metal in the refining processes. So this this scraping off of the slag was it's one way that you would use this caustic soda, this lime, this ash. You could use it to clean your hands of dirty things, and you can also use it to clean the metal. But it's really referring to this idea of so when you have barich, this idea is, you can hear the word reich in there. This is where we get the word ruach. Ruach is and reich are very similar. So in English, what do we say today to this day? Oh boy, does that ever reek? It's a small wind. It's a small
Yeah.
spirit, right? And so here we have the bars, the tabernacle, and this is why I get into like calling different parts of the tabernacle different things. And some of these things are, they're called multiple things at the same time. If I said, "Oh, go stand by the pillar," and then if you're standing by the pillar, "Hey, would you lean up against the post right there?" You wouldn't start looking for another thing. You would know that a pillar and a post is pretty much the same thing. And I'm just using it in different contexts. So sometimes the language in the Bible, it comes out that way. It's like, oh, it's also referring to that. And so when they're trying to create something brand new, and it's like, no, Simon didn't say, go and make a post after he told you to make a bunch of pillars. So we have the same thing, but these are bricham, that this idea that the wind, a small wind goes through them. And because the sun is heating the top of this thing. And so as the sun heats it, the air gets more and more, lighter. And so it bubbles up, it floats up. And as if it's continually pulling the cool air from the ground up into it's kind of a chimney effect, natural chimney effect. So yes, to the point that they could have well used that hole in the top and having it, possibly even rolled away, like the heavens, recede like what, a scroll. So
I'm still metabolizing the comparison of the reek to the ruach. I just feel like I can use that next time my wife, says something reeks around here. I'm like, well, you know what? It's really just a little bit of the ruach, okay, babe? It's all good. Anyways, brother, I'm gonna get to some questions, guys. If you have any questions for Brother Andrew, please put it in all capitalization. That'll be easier to stand out. There was one that I picked up about 20 minutes ago by our brother Wes Blaze here. He's asking, how much has Andy incorporated the Greek Septuagint into his studies?
Enough to know I don't want to use it. And I'll say that from the standpoint, there's one particular thing that the Septuagint does not capture, and that is clockwise. When you're told to lay out the courtyard, you are going towards the south and towards the right. And so when I say towards the south and towards the right, you have two words there. And in the English, they translate it to the south side southward. It's like, well, what does that even mean? To make the curtains to the south side southward. But when you understand it's towards the south and towards the right, now you start to see clockwise emerge out of that, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so this is a particular detail that the people who are translating the Septuagint, it's clear that they didn't understand this, because otherwise they would have included the word, so that they would have both a word for south and a word for right in there. But they've omitted that. And so I'm kind of joking in that, saying, well, I don't need to look at it. But I was actually trying to get a guy, Jackson Snyder, to look at it. And he started having some health problems around the time. So I've got some exegesis drawings, and I wanted him to go through this whole Hebrew exegesis that I have with respect to all the different parts, and see how it fares in the Septuagint. So I kind of taken upon myself to learn the Greek alphabet, or we should maybe say alphabeta. But my command of Greek is not, I mostly studied Hebrew, and I think from a supremacy side, I actually have come to believe within recent months that the Peshitta is actually the inspired New Testament word. And I think that's proven by Bible codes. If you start looking at the Bible codes and what you see with equidistant letter skips, there's some phenomenal findings in that. And I had no idea of any of that until a few months ago. And so now that I've seen that, I was very favorable to Aramaic being more accurate than the Greek. And you can start seeing different things in the Greek, like there's this one point where it says in Revelation, where it was written on his thigh, the Lord our righteousness, or something. Well, in Hebrew, you've got the word regel, which is sometimes translated as foot or leg. Yeah. And there's degel, which is like a flagpole or a banner. So So when's the last time you wrote the Lord our righteousness on your leg? And because the R looks so much like the D, the resh looks like the dalet in Hebrew, it's clear that the people who are translating the book of Revelation were actually translating it with whether the font was sloppy or their command of that language was a little subpar. And that's what it seems to be, according to a few nuts and bolts pieces like that. Again, to write on your thigh, the Lord our righteousness, compared to writing that on a banner. I'm going to write it on a banner. Okay.
Right. Yeah,
And
that makes sense to me. The blessed one is asking, what is the material? Porpoise, beaver, leather, etc. Heard tons of options. Yeah, I some of the like beaver to me doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but let's hear what you got to say, brother.
yeah, so there is less description. Oh, let me go back to the curtains. The tabernacle curtains are engineered. They're referred to as ma'asah chashav, or basically the idea of a thoughtful work or a cunning work. Sometimes they translate it as artistic, and I disagree with that. But the idea of a woven work also. There are more words that are used to describe the curtains in the tabernacle account than there are to describe the Ark of the Covenant. So that's a point of reference, and this has been a mystery to the what do you call them, the translators, because they're looking at this whole thing. Exodus 26:1 through 26:13. That is the first two curtain sets, and they're given in exactness in length and length and width and quantity. And then we come upon this 26:13 or 14 rather, that describes the leather. And the leather, it's just like, yeah, it'd make the leather, the upper leather and then the reddened leather. And this gets to be like how efficient the language is. It doesn't say to make the lower leather. It says to make the upper leather. But that means that there is a lower leather, because it has to be, because otherwise how would you have one that's upper? Right. And so we know that the lower is reddened because it's described as reddened. And so this ma'aramim is this or I'm thinking the or is a word for skin, which sounds a lot like light. It's spelled with an ayin instead of an aleph, but the aleph, the ayin, this upper leather is tachshim, and the rabbis have argued for years of what it means. So what you'll see is in these cases, sometimes they're listing it as porpoise skin. Sometimes they're listing it as badgers and badger skin, and there's a Hebrew word eel, which is spelled ayin yod lamed. So this is the what's oftentimes translated as ram. Okay. And the word for ram, I think it's it's spelled with an ox, the idea of antlers. So the idea of antlers, an antlered animal, it seems to be very kind of inevitable or almost non-negotiable, because these are kosher animals. There's a lot of people who, it's like did they kill Flipper to make the tent? Because it says dolphin and porpoise. But if you think about hides of sea cows, I've seen a translation say that there's these animals. What do? Over the land, they porpoise over the land. If you look at the way that a dolphin breaches out of the water and back in, breaches out, it's very similar to the travel of a deer or a gazelle, right? And so I think that these earlier anglicized, these carryovers, whether it's porpoise or dolphin, are really making reference to these, four-hoofed, mammal land creatures that, again, they got in their backyard there. So I don't think they went back to Egypt to go collect a bunch of leather. They took it ahead of time, knowing that, we got to harness all the dolphins that we can,
Right.
because that's not a clean animal.
No.
To have an unclean animal in this is, to me, is just so ridiculously unacceptable. It's just, I won't even entertain the thought. Because to get the skins off, you got to be exposing yourself to all the carcass and all the unclean, the innards and things like that. And the unclean animals rot a whole lot faster than the clean ones, and they carry all sorts of nasty parasites on top of that. So even Flipper, maybe, I'm guessing. But let's see the Flipper factor. What was I saying on that? The porpoising. So that this idea that these are probably rams. So Exodus 26:14 talks about the reddened layer, then the upper layer. The upper layer is Takashim, which they think is an animal species. I don't think it's a species. I think it's a treatment, because I think that the Bible text is so efficient that they are saying, okay, use this ram leather. The lower is going to be reddened, and the upper is going to be what? More clear, more translucent. If you ever take a chamois, you wet the chamois, you hold it up to the light, you can see it passes light.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they would have used that, or sometimes if you put oil on paper, right, you get a more of a translucent effect where it suddenly is allowing this this light to permeate.
True. Yeah.
And so this is why I think that's what you would do in a yurt, where the center is traditionally what? The skylight.
Yeah, it would make sense to make it darker on the bottom.
I did meet I met a Karaite Jew in Israel who shared that opinion, albeit a minority one. So I can't say that I thought of it. Someone else thought of it before me, but I also thought of it. As I came to that conclusion, or that speculation or belief, that's what it was. And there's actually the word, it's translated as azure, azure, which is referring to like the sky, clear blue sky. And so this is part of the reason where they think they're dyed red or dyed purple. It's like, well, if they're dyed kind of, like if it's made to be clear, opaque, allowing light through, that would stand to reason why, the interlinear is using azure, possibly is. So going back to what that word originally meant, and the fact that no Hebrew lexicon seems to want to take credit for defining what that word is, but I can promise you it's not a Wisconsin badger.
All right. Excellent. So we're going to take one more question here. Brother Trevor Mishler's asking, Exodus 40 verse 8 says, set up the court round about. Is this a hint to roundness?
Absolutely. Saviv, Saviv, and Saviv. I was mentioning that. And we see that Saviv in Exodus 27. It's like around verse 18 or so, plus or minus. And what you see reiterated there is the verb saviv, which is samek bet yud bet. And that word, again, the samek is a circle, and then you have two bets, two half houses of the tent joined together. So I very much think that this is a picture of, northern tribes and southern tribes coming together, because this thing it's built in halves. This is what the text is talking about throughout. So let's see, what was I going to say on that Saviv? Oh, there's a guy named Hully or Sully or something. He's a Christadelphian or something like that. And 100 years ago or 150 years ago, he came up with a plan for Ezekiel's temple, which was based on he's got a round moat around it, but the rest of it's square inside. So, but the point is it's got this round moat, and he made that moat round specifically because of that exact word that your guest just brought up on this idea of roundabout. So
yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
Absolutely.
Well, brother, we've covered quite a bit tonight, and I really do appreciate your time and presentation. It's been fascinating discussing these things for you, brother. I'm sold. You can mark me on the tally board of another person who's old, because I think this is compelling evidence, and it just makes sense in terms of the cosmological model that I do believe we exist within. And so it seems to be modeling that for sure visually when I look at it. So, I mean,
Well,
that's a
what
portion of it, but everything else you've discussed is
and
makes a lot more sense.
whether you believe that we're on a ball or a flat plane, either case, this thing is what makes sense, because as you go into it, you're looking at a dome. When you go to a planetarium, what do you see? You see this canopy overhead, and
Hmm.
the sky is described that way as a canopy. So, definitely our perspective, this is agreeable to both models, and I say that. So,
Yeah, awesome, brother. You want to plug some stuff before we conclude the evening?
yeah, I guess my website again, I have on my website, um, so you can buy the model, that model kit. You can buy my book, The House of El Shaddai, which goes through this. If you are a skeptic and you think, oh boy, he's just whistling Dixie, he's making all this stuff up. This is where I go through, basically mostly verse per verse, and prove it around and explain why along the way. I also have PowerPoint. I've been working on a homeschooling electronic platform that we're trying to roll out with the website revamp, that's called Beit Shaddai, which I really want to make for it's for homeschoolers. It's taking my former PowerPoint. I have that PowerPoint still for sale on my website, but where that you can use that as like a self-guided tour. But
Yeah,
we're really giving that a lot of facelift, and
I actually really
uh,
enjoyed it, brother. I went through some of that a couple
okay,
weeks ago. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's very
yeah, very
comprehensive,
good.
very visually appealing. Yeah, it's a good job.
Yeah, that's that. So Kim in Australia has been helping me out with that for some time, I've been a little slack because I've been, again, a bit overloaded with too many different things, and so
I hear you.
we are getting back to that. We're having weekly team meetings as far as volunteer stuff. So there's a lot of different things that, as far as if people want to get involved, they certainly could, but part of it's a matter of what and what capacity. Some of this is just, when I say, a matter of funding. And that um, my imagination is very much curtailed by a budget. So this whole, the putting your money where your mouth is. The tabernacle is made as what, this Solomon does this elaborate prayer, and he says, oh, when your people, when they sin and they repent and they pray towards this place, may they, may you forgive them. And the answer Solomon gets back from the Almighty is like, I have heard your prayer and I've accepted this as a place for sacrifices. So when we start to take sacrifice out of religion, we start having a lot of goofy things go on. So,
Mhm.
I would like to have this set up at different feasts, etc. And
That would be. I was
that's
gonna say that. That would be so fun. That'd be
that's
such a
a
cool experience to be
that's
like.
a goal, to have
Yeah,
people walking in, and you say, that's that part right there. That's Exodus 26:4, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is where, my opinion, this needs to go. That's,
yeah.
part of the vision for the project. So,
Should reach out to
um,
Ken Ham and see if you can park it next to the Ark encounter.
well, I've
That'd be
tried
awesome.
reaching out. I kind of said, "Hi Ken, you're the Answers in Genesis guy." Well, I said, I'm the Answers in Exodus guy.
Nice.
But Ken, he's got a lot of, when I say mainstream church sponsors to cater to. He's got his own, interest in creation science. There's two museums in Kentucky. He's got the Ark Encounter, and then he's also got a Genesis museum. And so I don't think that he would. I gave him a copy of my book in person. I don't think he's read it. He passed it off to his aide,
Yeah.
and so to get him and, that crowd, those people. I mean, they started trying to do fundraising for the Tower of Babel. Like $20 million they were trying to get for rebuilding the Tower of Babel, and I'm
Yikes.
like, this is the tower we got to build.
Yeah.
So the more people who, this is kind of a, a vote with your wallet, but with your pocketbook, with your heart, with your, prayers. I mean, this is a number of to bring this to the world in the sense that it needs to be. It's like, guess what? You haven't been reading your Bible right. This is proof, and this isn't the only thing. Yes, tell him to add 5 more giraffes. He's actually got a section in his museum that's dedicated to that topic and problem. And I actually my first book, You Like Jesus, I actually had an artist make a little cartoon with Noah's Ark where it's lopsided and showing the 14 giraffes on the because we got 7 pairs, right?
Yeah.
7 pairs of the clean. And you think about it from the standpoint of an animal. They cats and dogs are born into what? Litters. There's a whole ton of them around there, like litter. They're all over the place, right?
Yeah.
But clean animals are born in calves, or like 1, maybe 2, but typically 1 at a time. And just from an eating standpoint, how many lions are gonna, or how many deer are gonna last against how many lions for how long? You need to have a head start on your clean animals. I mean, you can't have it any other way.
Yeah.
And so this is one simple argument. It's like, come on, guys, you go through all this logistical gymnastics to prove all these animals will fit, while at the same time not proving the importance of the kosher animal, the nature of the kosher animal, the Bible reference to the clean animal, right? When I say clean, it's but anyway, so yes, I would like to have where we're presenting this in a way that is equally impressive because this would be as tall as the ark and the ark encounter. Okay. So this is something that I've been trying to exploring beginning of this year. I went down to Missouri with Robert. Thanks to Robert, he's been trying to get me connected with people who are interested in doing large Bible projects. And this is this is the only thing we've ever been told to build. We're not told to build churches. We're not told to build synagogues. We're told to, this is the one thing, the one thing. So why would we not want to build this? That's in my mind anyway. So
Yeah, I love it, brother. As a parting question for you on my behalf, I gotta ask you. So we're told that John the Baptist operated in the spirit of Elijah, according to Yeshua. Do you believe that you're operating in the spirit of Bezalel? It's not really a serious question, but
I do have my my email website, or my email that I have for my project is Bezalel@project314.org. Okay, so if people want to reach out, they can do that there with that. But getting into Bezalel is like literally the breakdown of that. You can break it down several ways. One is house in the image of El, image of God, right? House in the image of God. So this is the architect who took Moses' instructions, says, okay, let's do this. I know how to do this. And he's described as kind of a jack of all trades, and again, master of what. And so he's kind of multidisciplined, whatever. I have a resume that's a bit of a yard sale myself, but the idea of Bezalel, it's also God's onion. Betzal means onion of God, right? And so
layers to him.
right there's the idea of layers in it. There's also the idea of it's something that like a mound cropping out above the earth. And we also have, I guess this whole thing of like, I'm not Moses. I can't claim that I received a vision in that sense of a vision of like, okay, rays of light and harp music starts playing, or, bright angels, or whatever. It's like, this came from the word. This came from Moses. And before it came from Moses, it came from El Shaddai. It came from the Almighty. And so the fact that I've been given the privilege of this, discovery, rediscovery, it's a little bit of a quirky thing. And I try not to go, overboard on claiming, some measure of, dare I say, divine authority, et cetera, just because it's very, it's a spooky place to be. And I hear a lot of people making claim to divine revelation, and many of them I don't believe, and many of them I don't like, and I don't trust. And so I try to stay out of that footprint limelight type of thing, and just try to share what I come to see and understand, and hoping that everyone else will get on the Hebrew bandwagon and Tabernacle wagon, because there's a lot here in it. So
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem, as the Jews say, man, praise be the name is. So he's, the fact that he's revealed it to me by breadcrumbing me through all this stuff, or sweaters, whatever. However, I'll take what I can get here, I guess. Is my point. So
that's amazing. Well, again, thank you so much, brother, for coming on. Really do appreciate it. It has been eye-opening, very informative, a lot of good positive comments in the comment section. I was trying to peruse the comment section while listening to you, and a lot of people are enjoying what they're hearing. Miss Sarah Hosticoder, sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. She says the tour on your site is fun. She's going to use that for homeschool. So that's
excellent.
good. That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of good positive things people are saying here. So guys, show your support. If if what you heard tonight resounds in your hearts and your minds, if it sounds like it makes sense, definitely do your research. Hear brother Andrew out, but yeah, go show support over on his project314.org website there. He's got a bunch of stuff of he's already listed, and yeah, brother, thank you so much for coming on.
Religion is not a spectator sport, right?
Yes, where you need to be participants actively.
The more that the laity here, when I say the audience is equipped and in this knowledge, that the greater its opportunity is to spread, because I can't spread this by myself. This has got to be grassroots and spirit led, and so the more that people can absorb, like again, Ken's had this model construction experience, and hopefully it's built his understanding to the point where he's like, he won't even entertain the shoebox thing. So I'm hoping that everyone here in the audience is able to have very comparable experience and conviction with this, because it does matter, because guess what? Thus saith the Lord.
Yeah,
So.
I accepted the shoebox model wholesale without really testing it at all. Just assumed it was correct, and now I've rejected it officially. So I'm on board with your model there, brother. It's awesome. So
good.
So thanks again, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you so
maybe
much
we'll have
for
you on
having me.
again if you're interested. Maybe we'll have you on again one of these days.
Sure thing.
And all the best to you, brother. I wish all the best for you in your endeavors with this, and may Yahweh bless you with this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and may you be blessed in your endeavors as well.
Thank you, brother.
And thank your audience as well. So,
okay, shalom, brother.
All right, shalom.
Thank you guys so much for joining me this evening. I appreciate you so much. All the moderators who were in the live chat taking care of business there. You guys are awesome. I love you. Thank you for the Be Good at Broadcast new membership there. Really do appreciate that. Guys, I'm going to be having brother Jeremy McGarry on this Wednesday. We're going to talk about the recent solar eclipse and his research and visual recordings of what he was able to capture during that event. And I think what he's going to present on Wednesday is going to be pretty eye-opening. So please do join me and him for that live stream this Wednesday. Other than that, guys, I think I got one more thing I wanted to quickly touch on. We are approaching the end of the third month on the solar calendar there. So we have on the official summer starting tomorrow on this calendar. So guys, make sure to flip your calendars if you're following along in this calendar. Move your pegs around accordingly as well if you're doing the wooden peg calendars. But yeah, summer is here. So we're already done the first 3. That's pretty crazy. Time does fly, but it's fun. Yahweh's an awesome God, and there's so many cool things about this walk that I'm appreciating. Obviously, brother Andrew Hoy's research and the Tabernacle, that would be so cool, guys. To one day be able to actually do some feasting inside of this thing. That would be epic. I mean, ultimately, we're waiting for the return of Messiah and the New Jerusalem to do all that stuff, but that would be really cool to do it in the replica as close to possible as could be on this side of the day of the Lord. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful evening. be blessed. And again, join me this Wednesday for the next live stream. Shalom.